Welcome to the Authority File, the podcast that features conversations about the life cycle of scholarly communication. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice, a publishing division of the Association of College and Research Libraries. We're taking a break from our usual format this month to turn our gaze in-house. Choice publishes a couple of blogs which you can find on choice360.org, and one of those is Toward Inclusive Excellence, or TIE for short, and it explores issues of equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility as they affect the higher education community. The other, of course, is LibTech Insights, which examines practical applications and trends in library technology. In this special 2-episode series, we're putting the spotlight on TIE, which is celebrating its 5-year anniversary this month, and I'm delighted to invite to the program TIE's editor, Fatima Mohi Eldon, who is also the social sciences editor for Choice Reviews. Some of you may already be familiar with TIE and its weekly newsletter, but a lot has happened in the last 5 years regarding DEI and higher ed, and TIE has been through it all. Fatima joined us to talk about some key moments in TIE's coverage, explore important trends, and hint at some upcoming developments. In this episode, we turn the clock back and reveal how Toward Inclusive Excellence got started. Okay, hi Fatima, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Sure. All right, so why don't you tell us a little bit about Toward Inclusive Excellence, or TIE as we like to call it here. When and how did it start, and what is its goal?
Yeah, definitely. So TIE launched in 2021 with the mission to provide solutions, opinions, and constructive discourse on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility within academic libraries and higher education at large. And within that, we also wanted to highlight initiatives that were maybe underway or being planned or being talked about that really deserved more coverage that could address maybe structural inequities.
Mhm.
So, a big impetus for launching TIE was, I would say, the nationwide protests against racial injustice in 2020. And at Choice, we wanted to address how these issues were impacting and being addressed by the communities we serve, which are primarily academic librarians, but also information professionals more broadly. And our goal was to develop a pool of knowledge and actionable resources that those audiences could tap into to understand racism from new perspectives and promote diversity on their campuses. So within that goal, we've always striven to bring more diverse voices to bear on these issues, both through the topics that we cover and also through the contributors that we invite to write for TIE. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the editorial leadership of Alexia Hudson Ward, who is also ACRL's current president, I should add, who led TIE as editor in chief during the first few years of our existence. And she was really helpful in guiding our editorial strategy for those years and also really helpful for shaping our early editorial focus and vision.
Yeah, that's right. It was such a joy to work with Alexia on this blog, and um, I should say you were part of the team back then.
Yeah.
And as after Alexia moved on, you took it over.
Hmm. Hmm.
So maybe talk a little bit about like sort of Ty's purview and um, sort of under your editorship, maybe how that approach has, shifted a little bit or even over the last 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I will say I definitely learned a lot from Alexia when she was in the position, and it kind of really helped me to think about like how expansive Thai could be in its approach.
Mm,
So since the beginning, I mean, we've always focused primarily on publishing weekly blog posts on relevant topics, and she was a big writer for us during her tenure. And we've really covered so many, so it's hard to narrow down like just like a handful that are
yeah.
kind of exemplary of the topics that we cover. But I remember early on she did focus a lot on promoting inclusion and belonging, equitable staffing models, and also preserving histories that are often ignored or under threat of being erased. Um, But even early on, we quickly branched out into other mediums. So beyond the blogs, we also started producing webinars and interviews, maybe a couple of research reports. But especially, we leaned into podcasts and a lot of really lengthy resource lists. In large part, the podcasts were very big because Alexia was such a great moderator and interviewer, and we were also able to, and very fortunate to be able to pull in a lot of really esteemed guests, so faculty experts, but also academic and library deans. And we even developed an In Dialogue series where we brought sometimes two speakers on at once. In dialogue with each other and moderated by Alexia to discuss different topics as well. And those are really wide ranging, also, the podcast topics, and they're still available on the TIE homepage, also under the media tab on choice360.org. So I would really encourage all of your listeners on the Authority File to listen to those as well, because there's sure to be something to interest everyone. And as I mentioned, we produced a number of really lengthy resource lists that were curated by faculty experts on different topics like constitutional rights, environmental justice, leisure studies, and sports. But since 2024, there's been, as you mentioned, a kind of a slight editorial shift, in part because we didn't have Alexia's writing for us anymore, or moderating the podcast, so we had to bring on a number of new blog contributors to write for us. So the topics shift a little based on like what they're interested in, what they're observing on the ground, and also kind of what we suggest to them based on news that we're reading. And we've also kind of shifted from the lengthier curated resource list to shorter ones. Sometimes a little bit more just broadly focused, like 15 titles to read for Pride Month or 6 titles to read for MLK Junior Day. And we've also started incorporating in the same vein lists of forthcoming titles from academic publishers, which we call the TIE preview of upcoming reads. And these were loosely inspired by the forthcoming titles feature that we publish under Choice in general. But in order to differentiate them, we pinpointed some very specific themes to focus on that were relevant to DEI. And so those have been pretty popular, and we publish them on a bi-monthly schedule. But if interest grows and if we brainstorm other themes, we could definitely bump it up to a monthly feature. And then also, I really wanted to mention the relatively new text-based interview feature we launched, called TIE Talks. So that's been ongoing since 2024. And that features a Q&A with thought leaders, primarily within higher ed, but also outside of higher ed, usually pertaining to a book or recent research that they've published on topics that are broadly, related to diversity, equity, inclusion, or racial justice. And those have kind of supplanted the podcast interviews for now, at least. Although in the realm of like audio, video content, we have started expanding our webinar program again since 2024, and we hope to continue growing it over the coming months.
Excellent. That was fantastic, Fatima. Yeah, I can recall, like, under Alexia's leadership, it was, Ty was, there was a sort of editorial um, reaction to what was happening in the news and around,
Hmm.
the country and the world, and then, but always an effort to kind of tie that back to, kind of what's happening on campus,
Hmm.
and make some recommendations around, you know, policy or other implementations in a sort of a library context around that stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah. So it was also, when we launched TIE, it was a pretty significant move for choice. Can you help us understand how TIE fits in with ACRL and ALA strategic pillars, which include DEI as one of those? How does TIE align with that mission?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think it aligns very closely, and it's a point that I'm really proud of about like the mission that we serve at TIE and at Choice. At Choice, it's long been a cornerstone of our mandate to consider racial justice in how we promote and support academic study.
Mhm.
And I think that could always be seen in little ways through like the reviews that we publish, the topics that we cover, the cross disciplinary tags. But I think what was so special about TIE is like how it encompasses so much all at once and so regularly, and um, a lot more immediately apparent to readers. So we're regularly and actively highlighting issues pertaining to DEIA as they're affecting the academic library community in real time. And because we have academic librarians and informational information professionals writing for us on a weekly basis and sharing their observations and insights in real time. And I think another thing that's great is that they're really speaking to their colleagues in the field. And so, from my perspective, I see TIE really creating an open and active dialogue among academic librarians and on how they're responding to issues of DEIA, especially in this moment in time. And we've even had readers reach out wanting to write for TIE because they've been inspired by pieces that they've read. So I really see that as evidence of the dialogue in action. Another great thing about TIE is the diversity of content that we offer. So, the weekly blog posts are really great and they're short and quick and really responsive to what's happening on the ground. And they offer insights from librarians on the ground. And then we can maybe explore some of those topics in greater depth through, let's say, resource lists or webinars, which allow readers to kind of delve more deeply and read more fully on the topics that they're getting kind of glimpses of through the blogs. And then I think also the upcoming reads features are really helpful for offering glimpses at new titles that are soon to be forthcoming. That libraries may want to acquire for their collections. And since those lists are thematically focused, it helps librarians zero in on books that are immediately useful to racial and social justice collections. And so I think all of these elements combine to really reinforce DEI as a cornerstone of academic librarianship, like out in the higher education community, but also through ALA and ACRL. And it really underscores how we can be a pool of knowledge and um, resources for academic librarians on the ground so that we can support their work and also uplift them in their work, especially if they're feeling burnt out. And there's a pool of contributors that they can also reach out to themselves if they feel they want to follow up on a topic, let's say. I think that's really helpful about TIE as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, can you provide some highlights from Thai from the last year? Any content, whether it's a blog post or a resource list or webinars that you're particularly proud of or that especially resonated with Thai's readership and audience?
Yeah, sure. I mean, uh, maybe I'm biased. I think we've produced a lot of great content. It's sometimes hard to pick out just a few pieces, but I will say, a handful that speak to very well to the scope of what we're putting out these days would be maybe Jamia Williams' blog post from a couple months ago on championing the rights of international students. There was also a webinar from last April, that we produced on affirmative action and the future of DEI. And then I would also say any of our previews of upcoming reads are great as well, but maybe especially last summer's upcoming reads in disability studies. And I think that all of these are pieces are really important, not just for capturing the scope of the content that we're producing, blog posts, webinars, forthcoming titles, but they also exemplify like a lot of the topics that we're striving to address that are really pressing and really important and maybe need to be further addressed in the academic library community. So definitely international students, that's a huge topic right now that we've been thinking about for a long time. And the future of DEI, I mean, that's a massive existential question that I know is on the minds of a lot of librarians. And then also, disability studies has been a topic that I've wanted to explore more through TIE. And I think, we could still like explore it through many more, blogs or webinars. But I think at least having that set upcoming reads list helps keep it on our radar permanently, like as
Right.
a kind of an anchor.
hmm Excellent. So, yeah, I have to say you've done so well with taking Thai in a new direction under your leadership. Are there any topics, that you'd like to address more in the future? I mean, you talked about disability studies, but
Hmm.
are there
Hmm.
others, any other underrepresented subjects that you think you'd like to spotlight on the blog?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as the editor, and like I said, having learned from Alexia, like really the full scope of what you could explore through TIE and through a consideration of DEIA, I would say it's, there's so many areas. And with a small team, it can be hard to reach out to as many people as you'd like, and to ensure that you have as inclusive coverage as you want to
Right.
provide. Sometimes maybe it's just not feasible to, cover every area, but I will say definitely disability studies is something I would love to continue exploring in the future. I think it's a really important topic. It's not an unknown topic, but I just think that the coverage in the last few years, especially maybe over the last several years, has really the output has grown in a way that we could now explore it in more depth. Like there are more experts out there that we could tap into.
Hmm.
I know we've touched on like Native American studies and rights a handful of times in the past. It's definitely something I would love to like explore in greater depth. And also I would say that gender identity and protections for gender nonconforming communities is a big uh, concern, especially among academic library communities right now. And we've had some pieces on this, and it's something I would love to explore further as well. Some other topics that are kind of timely that I might want to have Ty explore in different mediums, maybe through webinars, would be kind of disinformation or misinformation in general. I think that's really pertinent to the library community, and maybe explore how that manifests in different disciplines so that we're offering comprehensive coverage. And then last year, we had a really great webinar on refugee and immigrant communities and academic libraries. And that's still a very pressing topic. It's not going away. And I think it's due for an update. So that's something that we're thinking about as well. And then, there's always evergreen topics within the field of academic librarianship, like diversifying collections or library displays or designing inclusive spaces that we've explored a little, but we could stand to explore a bit further as well. And so I think that it would be a great opportunity for me as well to maybe, you know, give out a call to all your listeners, any Thai readers who might be listening, that if you feel yourself that there are certain topics that aren't being addressed, I would say Thai is a great medium through which to cover them. And maybe I haven't even thought of them yet. Maybe our team hasn't thought of them yet, but I encourage you to reach out and send me a pitch. I would like to say I'm very easy to work with, and I'm always eager to hear new pitches and work with new contributors. So please definitely, like, if there's something that readers feel like we're missing, definitely reach out.
Yes, I can vouch for that, Fatima,
Yeah,
for sure.
thank you.
Um,
We will put my email on the page, but also just so you can have it listening, my email address is fmohie-eldin@ala.org. And if you had trouble catching that, it will also be in writing.
you just heard from Fatima Mohi Eldin, editor of the Choice blog Toward Inclusive Excellence and social sciences editor for Choice Reviews. Join us next week as we look more closely at DEI trends in higher ed, examine how Toward Inclusive Excellence and Choice Reviews intersect, and look ahead at some upcoming coverage on the blog. If you'd like to contribute to the blog, you're welcome to email Fatima at fmohieeldin@ala.org. That's FMOHIE-ELDIN@ala.org. The Authority File podcast is brought to you every week by Choice and produced and edited by digital media producer Sabrina Kofer. Underwriting opportunities are directed by Melissa Carr and Ryan King. For more information about underwriting for the podcast, download the Choice Media Kit at choice360.org. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.